Jaime Lannister sat astride his destrier upon the ridge overlooking King's Landing. The battered fields of the Stormlands stretched beyond him, like a twilight sea. He wore the gold of the Kingsguard, his breastplate gleaming in the dying light, bearing the three-headed lion atop his right pauldron. Across the sky, smoke wreaths born of the city's devastation curled toward the blackening firmament. The drums of combat still echoed faintly from the walls. The clamor of siege engines, the roar of men's voices, the distant lament of burning timbers collapsing into the streets. He swallowed, chest tight with the acrid tang of wildfire that drifted on the wind from somewhere deep within the throne city. The crow's feet at the corners of his eyes still carried the glow of battle, but they were fixed now upon a single, terrible question. In that moment, the oaths he had sworn at his investiture, before the Seven, before the memory of his father, before the mother who had borne him, rose in his mind like a summons. He had been taught that the Kingsguard died for the king, no matter how mad, no matter how lost. And though the whole world called him the Kingslayer for what he had done, he'd never truly believed he would. The wind blew colder as Jaime urged his horse forward, trotting down the slope toward the broken gate of the city. As he neared, the carnage became more lurid. The bodies of common soldiers littered the moat, still slick with greenish smoke. Corpses clung to the shattered remains of the gatehouse. The air shimmered in the heat of fires, licking at the ruined towers. Each step brought the renewed chorus of voices in his head, Cersei's laughter at their childhood games, Tywin's disappointed gaze at his failures, the whisper of the Mad King, Aerys the Targaryen, calling him his precious knight. Inside the walls, the scene was worse still. A rain of embers fell like falling stars above the streets, and the gold cloaks staggered among the wounded, attempting feebly to restore order as the assailants, a maelstrom of northern and riverlander host, swarmed through the breaks in the walls. Yet of the burning halls, none burned as brightly as the Red Keep itself, its towers set alight by the ravening fury of dragonfire and human cruelty alike. Jaime felt his heart twist as he spurred deeper into the city. Staff officers shouting directions, common folk scrambling for safety. He reached the outer bailey where the Kingsguard stood, their white cloaks filthy, their helms dented, their blades nicked and stained. The Lord Commander, Sir Barristan Selmy, knelt beside a wounded squire, pressing cloth to a severed leg. Sir Boros Blount sharpened his sword against a whetstone, eyes downcast. 2 towers north, a salvo had blasted the gate. The vaulting breach roared still. In the hush between moments of violence, Jaime dismounted and approached Barristan. "Sir Barristan," he said quietly, offering a glove-clad hand. Barristan looked up, silver hair matted with soot, a line of concern creasing his weathered face. "Sir Jaime," he replied, voice low, "the king commands your presence in the throne room." Jaime nodded, breath catching. He hadn't heard the Mad King's voice since the last time he'd been summoned, hours or days ago. Time folded in chaos. Still, the summons was no less dreaded. He rose, steeling himself, and made for the steps that led to the gate of the inner keep. Each footfall sounded thunderous, as though the very earth protested his coming. The burning scaffolds of the War Council's galleries glowed behind him. The blackened bricks of the Hands Tower sagged with the weight of ruin. Jaime's mind flickered to his sister, Cersei, waiting perhaps behind some hidden door. Safe, or safer, in Tywin's manse beyond the walls. But that thought was banished the moment he crossed the threshold. Inside the throne room, the great hall's once majestic arches were streaked with smoke. The floor was slick with shattered flagstones and spilled wine. Aerys too sat upon the iron throne, a shape of spidery steel that seemed to pierce his flesh, and he was swathed in a gown of violet velvet that bore the scorch of wildfire. His face, though gaunt and lined, burned with inexorable fervor, and his white gold hair crowned him like some fallen star. "All hail the king," Aerys rasped, voice quavering like a dying ember. He gestured with a pale hand. "Come closer, Sir Jaime. I have need of my finest blade." Jaime stopped 15 paces from the dais. The hall fell silent, the only sound the distant cries of the dying. He bowed his head, a gesture of respect, but also of sorrow. "Your grace," he murmured. "I obey." The king's eyes glimmered. "There is traitor here, Sir Kingsguard. A man has dared to betray us, to spill Targaryen blood. His name is Brandon Stark. He sought to wrest the crown from its rightful head. He would set fire to the land. I command you to end his rebellion by cutting off his head." Nah. For a heartbeat, Jaime felt the old hunger for obedience rise, an automatic desire to bend his steel to orders. He remembered the boys of his father's training yard, the clang of steel, the cheers of the crowd. But then there came another voice, steady and cold. The unsullied memory of every oath he had sworn. He looked past Aerys at the doorway through which the king's guardsmen stood, 4 of them, trembling. Behind them lay the broken corpse of a messenger from the north. The head of Brandon Stark. Had the Mad King mistaken him for another? It was impossible. But the order remained: kill the traitor. Sir Jaime drew his sword from its scabbard with a single fluid motion, the metal sighing as it slid free. It was not his greatsword, Widow's Wail, taken from the smith in King's Landing. It was his father's old blade, the one he had carried since boyhood, the one he had sworn his vows upon. He rose to his full height, the white cloak falling back to reveal his golden gorget. "Kneel," Aerys commanded. He leaned forward, the torchlight flickering across his face. "Kneel and die in penance for your father's sins." Jaime steadied himself. His hand tightened on the leather-wrapped hilt. His voice came low. "I appeal to my oath, your grace," he said. "My loyalty is sworn to you, not your revenge. I am sworn to defend the king, not to slay your subjects at whim." "Oh." The hall trembled as a salvo boomed from the walls. Perhaps the gates had fallen. Perhaps the last of Tywin Lannister's host lay before them. But Jaime saw only the king. Aerys's face contorted, crimson in the torchlight. Rage and despair intermingled. "You dare defy me?" the king shouted. "You, my own kingslayer, my son of gold. You would betray your blood and crown." Jaime lowered his blade ever so slightly, the steel pointing at his own chest, the tip quivering. His heart thundered. But beneath that thunder lay an unyielding calm. "My blood flows for the realm, not for madness," he said. "I refuse to shed more Targaryen blood at your bidding." In the next instant, Aerys screamed, and the mass of guardsmen surged forward, steel clashing. Jaime spun, blade flashing, parrying a slash aimed for his throat. The king bellowed and retreated up the dais, eyes blazing. Servants and guardsmen scattered in panic. Smoke, incense, and sweat mingled in the vaulted chamber. Jaime fought with the grim efficiency of a seasoned knight, driving off Aerys' forces with thrusts and parries. Each man he felled was a brother in arms, once sworn to the same oath. But he could not relent. His voice rang out above the chaos. "Hold!" he roared to the remaining Kingsguard. "The king is mad. Heed no further commands." For a moment, the gold cloaks hesitated, uncertain. Then Sir Barristan stepped beside Jaime, blade in hand. "Heed him," Barristan said, voice steady. "The crown is no excuse for slaughter." The 2 Kingsguard held the field. The Mad King retreated to his dais, trembling, an ember transformed to ash. Jaime sheathed his sword and turned, breathing hard. The doors of the great hall burst open. A raven-haired figure strode in. Cersei Lannister, her gown torn, hair loose about her shoulders. Her green eyes widened at the carnage, at Jaime and Barristan standing amidst bodies and shards of broken columns. "Jaime," she whispered. Relief and horror warred within her. "What have you done?" He sheathed his sword fully and approached her slowly, cloak billowing. The Mad King sat fuming, but his authority lay shattered. Jaime helped Cersei to his side, guiding her away from the dais. "My vows remain," Jaime said softly to her. "But my honor demands more than blind obedience." As they passed the fallen, Jaime sensed the shift. The city's fate, the Targaryen dynasty's destiny, now rested on his next choice. He would stand by Aerys, not to murder, but to protect the realm from ruin. And in that choice lay treason, heartbreak, and the chance for a new legend. For better or worse, the story would be told of how Jaime Lannister refused to kill the Mad King and remained loyal to the dragon. Beyond the shattered arches, the flames of war still raged. But within Jaime's chest, a different fire burned. The fierce, unbending flame of a knight who chose his truth over his king's madness. And so his legend began anew. A.K.N.D. Jaime guided Cersei through the columned corridor of the Red Keep, each step echoing like a heartbeat in the wounded heart of the fortress. The torchlight danced on her pale cheeks, illuminating the terror in her eyes, even as relief and pride glimmered there. Behind them, the great hall's far gates were thrown open to admit the tide of soldiers, Lannisters and Targaryens alike, halting before the sight of their two white cloaks standing united. Cersei clung to his arm, voice trembling. "They will call you traitor, Jaime. They will rip us apart." He caught her gaze, steel in his green eyes. "Let them. My place is here, with you and with what is right." They emerged into the outer courtyard, where fires burned in overturned braziers, and the bodies of the fallen lay heaped like broken toys. The air was thick with ash and sorrow. Ser Barristan Selmy fell in beside them, his white cloak streaked with soot. Across his face lay the grave countenance of conviction. "The army waits for you, your grace," Barristan said to Jaime, "your father's host." Seasoned and true. "They look to you for leadership now," Jaime inhaled, shuddering from the weight of destiny pressing on his shoulders. He loosened one gauntlet and pressed fingertips to his brow, as though warding off a blade. "Then we shall give them direction," he said. "Gather the captains. We will restore order and judge what must be judged." "Nan." Barristan inclined his head and strode off toward the encampment beyond the inner walls. Cersei lingered, eyes downcast, and Jaime reached out to lift her chin. "We will face whatever comes together," he promised. She nodded, lips trembling. "Promise me you will not forsake me." He brushed a kiss to her temple. "Never." As dawn's first pale fingers crept across the sky, Jaime rode the length of the Lannister host arrayed in the courtyard, the banners of his house. Red lions on gold, fluttering like proud flames against the smoky morn. He wore no helmet, letting the light catch the tangled gold of his hair and the faint sheen of tears on his cheeks. He would be seen, not as the faceless blade, but as a man who had chosen his vow to honor over his vow to blood. Behind him marched Cersei, pale, wounded, yet regal even in her torn gown, supported by Sir Boros Blount and two aides. Silence fell as he rode to the front. The captains of every company, the men-at-arms newly crowned by Tywin's standard, the Knights of the Rose, and the Dornish spearmen, whose loyalty had been won by silver and oath. All fell to one knee as he passed, while Cersei remained standing. Only one voice broke the hush, the distant beat of drums heralding the arrival of King's men, the remnants of the city's forces gathering outside the broken gate. Jaime halted before the assembled ranks. "Lords and Knights of the West," he called, voice ringing clear. "My father's host stands here by right of his muster, but of right there can be no question. We are sworn to the crown, yet at this moment, the throne is empty of reason, its occupant consumed by madness. I have chosen a different path, as has Lord Barristan." He glanced toward the closed gate, where the Targaryen banner, black dragon on red, lay bloodied but unbowed. "The king yet lives, but he has commanded atrocity upon his own people. Under the oaths we swore, we must defend the realm, not slaughter it in fury. Any who would continue the war for bloodlust are free to depart." A murmur ran through the lines, tense as drawn steel. Cersei touched his arm. "What of the bannermen who will call us traitors? What of our name, our honor?" Jaime met her eyes. "Honor is not the gold heat of banners, but the steel of one's heart, ever true. We stand here to protect King's Landing from destruction, to prevent the slaughter of innocents. If that makes us traitors to a mad king, so be it." For a long moment silence reigned. Then one captain, a grizzled knight whose helm bore the twin roses of House Ashford, rose to his feet. "Sir Jaime is right," he said. "I have sworn my sword to the crown, not to folly. I ride with him to see the city saved." One by one, others rose, pledging their swords in a low murmur of oath. Cersei inhaled, relief flooding her face. But Jaime's own heart thundered at the cost. The Lannister host was fragmenting, torn between fealty to the throne and fealty to reason. He turned back to the gate, where the tide of King's men, survivors of the City Watch, stood arrayed behind the broken portcullis. Their captain, a tall man in fluted plate, raised a gauntlet in salute. Jaime dismounted and strode forward, Cersei at his side, Barristan close behind. "Sir Jaime Lannister," the man called, "by what right do you stand before the gates?" Jaime's voice was low, but all heard. "By the right of necessity. I am sworn to the protection of the crown and the realm. The Mad King commands its ruin. I refuse to see innocents burned by wildfire and slaughtered by lust for vengeance. By my command, the gates shall open without bloodshed, the city spared, provided you stand down and swear to defend the people, not the whims of your king." The captain studied him, doubt and horror warring in his eyes. Then, with a grim nod, he lowered his sword in salute. "It shall be as you command, Sir Kingsguard. By your leave, we will follow you." Jaime sheathed his blade. "Let no man lift steel against the city's folk. Any who would fight on for the Mad King will be met as traitors to the realm." The portcullis groaned upward. In the dawnlight, Jaime saw the city's walls scarred but standing, the red keep blackened but unbowed. He signaled to Cersei, "Come." Together, brother and sister, knight and queen, rode through the open gate, flanked by the Lannister host and the king's men, to the cheers of common folk who had huddled in the shadow of the wall, gaunt and weary-eyed. Mothers wept, children clung to their legs, and men fell to their knees, praising them as redeemers. Cersei raised her hand in benediction, nimble and sure, while Jaime's lips twitched into an unaccustomed smile. Within the inner city, Jaime convened a council in the Hand's Tower, repurposed now as a makeshift command post. Around a scarred oaken table sat Cersei, Barristan Selmy, Sir Bronn of the Blackwater, Lannister sellsword turned captain, the Ashford Knight, his sword set dripping mud, and a handful of aldermen and city officials. Maps were spread, stained with soot and wine, showing the city's gates, streets, and places of power. "We must secure the stores of wildfire," Jaime said, pointing to a scrawl marking the old alchemist's vault beneath the Red Keep. "The Mad King set caches throughout the city. If they fall into the wrong hands, we risk the incineration of us all." Barristan nodded. "I will lead a small party to secure each vault. Sir Jaime, shall I call for more Kingsguard?" He met Cersei's eyes. She gave a slight nod. "All who remain loyal to the realm," Jaime said. "But no more blood for madness." His heart stuttered at the memory of Aerys' voice. "Burn them all. That spark of insanity must be doused." Over the next days, Jaime moved through King's Landing like a specter of redemption. He oversaw the dismantling of wildfire caches. Green sap liquefied and poured into the moat, fuses snuffed out with sand and steel. He negotiated with guildmasters to reopen the bakeries, the smiths, the waterworks. He ordered damaged walls shored, ramparts repaired. In the streets, his white cloak was a banner of hope. The people whispered his name in reverence, recalling the glory of the kings he served, and hailing the mercy he showed. Cersei traveled by his side, her bloodless lips curving in cautious smiles. Her presence lent legitimacy to his actions. Her call that Jaime Lannister eat and sleep within the Red Keep, that he be hailed as protector of the realm, even as they both bristled at the titles forced upon them. They shared long nights in the solar above the Hand's Tower, poring over letters and petitions, planning the kingdom's governance until the rightful heir, Rhaegar's infant daughter, might mature to rule, or until a new monarch could be chosen. All the while, Jaime felt the world tilt beneath his feet. He had defied the Mad King, broken his oaths to Aerys, and yet in so doing had found a truer service, to the realm itself. One evening, as the lamps burned low, Cersei turned to him, pale candlelight dancing on her features. "Do you regret it?" she asked, voice hushed. Abandoning the throne? He traced the rim of a map with his fingertip. Regret? Every oath I ever swore struck silent in that throne room. I would do it 1,000 times rather than see children burn in the streets. She reached across the table, fingers brushing his. And the Mad King? What of him? Jaime's throat tightened. He is alive, but defeated. We will show him mercy, for the realm cannot endure another martyr. We will spare him, and when he can stand trial for his crimes, he will answer. A dark shadow flickered across Cersei's eyes. Some would call that mercy folly. He pressed her hand. Mercy is strength, not weakness. We shall break the wheel of vengeance here. Word of his defiance spread beyond King's Landing. In Highgarden, the Tyrells weighed alliance with the new regime. In Dorne, the Martells watched with wary eyes, their cold neutrality shifting to curiosity. The Vale's banners fluttered on distant winds, change stirring in the hearts of lords. But most dangerous was the rumble from the Westerlands. Tywin Lannister could not abide his son's betrayal of the crown, no matter how mad the king. Late one night, a rider from Casterly Rock arrived under Parley flag. His cloak bore the twin-headed lion of Lannister, crowned with the iron helm. Jaime broke the seal and skimmed the letter. His jaw clenched. Tywin wrote that unless Jaime returned to his father's banner, refortifying the Westerlands behind the king's true cause, his inheritance would be forfeit. Cersei read over his shoulder, lips pale. He threatens to disown us, she hissed. To turn our home against us. Jaime folded the letter. Then let him try. Mine is a new path, one of honor. I swore to serve the realm above all. My birthright is nothing if weighed against the lives of innocents. Menderwand. She bit her lip, anger gleaming. The Lannister name means power. Without father's support, we are alone. He cupped her cheek. We are not alone. We have each other, and we have the people we have saved. We will find allies, and if my father dares to march on us, I will stand as his equal, not his pawn. Cersei's eyes widened with equal parts fear and pride. Then may the Seven grant me the courage to stand beside you. Together, they rode at dawn to the Lion's Gate, where the Westerland host would enter King's Landing with red banners unfurled and steel in hand. Jaime donned his white cloak, but did not sheathe the sword at his hip. He would meet his father as both son and sovereign protector. Cersei walked at his side, her skirt swirling in the morning breeze. When Tywin entered the courtyard with 1,000 men-at-arms, the earth tremored with their passage. The corridors of power awaited their collision, father and son, each convinced of his righteousness. The hush that spanned the courtyard was broken only by the hiss of the wind through battered stone. Tywin Lannister dismounted, his helm tucked under one arm, his gaze steely, eyes as cold as polished steel. Jaime felt his chest tighten, the old guilt and yearning twisting in his gut. Cersei slipped her arm through Jaime's, standing as shield and herald. Father, Jaime said, voice steady. Welcome to King's Landing. Tywin's gaze flicked to Cersei, then to the assembled troops. I came because I heard you called for support, Jaime. That you stand by the crown in its peril. Jaime inclined his head. I stand by the realm, father. The king commands ruin upon his people. I refused his madness. Tywin's lips tightened. And so you slew your king? No, Jaime said. I did not slay him. I spared him to answer for his crimes. For a heartbeat, Tywin's face contorted. Rage, disbelief, accusation. He stepped forward, fist clenched. You would defy the Targaryens. You would betray their blood and mine. Cersei lifted her chin. He saved the city, father. He saved the realm. Now. At her words, a murmur ran through the host. Soldiers trading glances, uncertain whose command to heed. Tywin watched the ripple of doubt. He turned his gaze back to Jaime, rage burning fierce. Then you have soldiered beneath a false king, a pretender to our name. I serve the realm above our name, Jaime said. If House Lannister falls by my hand, so be it, but the realm will endure. Tywin's features hardened. He raised his voice, and the Lannister host answered with a clang of steel against shields. Then we shall settle this. brother to brother. Jaime grasped Cersei's hand, silent vow passing between them. Whatever came next, battle, betrayal, or bloodletting, they would face it as one. And so the fate of Westeros pivoted upon that moment. The son who refused to kill his king, the father who could not forgive that refusal, and the sister bound to both by love and loyalty. The drums of war would beat once more, but this time, steel would not fall for madness, and hearts would not break beneath crown and command. In that dawn's fragile light, Jaime Lannister's new legend took root, tempered by mercy and forged in defiance. A legend that would shape the realm for generations to come. A-K-A-N-D. Jaime felt the cold dawn wind at his back as he faced his father's host arrayed before him in the Lion's Gate courtyard. Cersei's hand tight around his. The air was thick with tension. Soldiers on both sides braced for conflict between the banners of Lannister gold and King's gold. The very heart of their house divided. Tywin Lannister, in full plate burnished black and gold, dismounted from his destrier and advanced until barely 20 paces separated father and son. His gray gaze was hard, unyielding. "Son," he said, voice low as the hush fell over the assembled knights, "you would set yourself above your birthright, above your vows, above the honor I bestowed upon you. You would turn traitor to the blood that gave you life." Jaime stepped forward, boots crunching on the crushed gravel. "I remain sworn to the realm, father. To the people of the Seven Kingdoms, not to one man's madness." "And no." Tywin's lips twisted. "Madness, you say? The king's whims are law. Your refusal to slay him is an act of rebellion." "A rebellion for justice," Jaime replied, chin raised. "The crown exists for the people, not the other way around." Tywin laughed, a harsh sound that carried bitter notes of disbelief. "And what now, Jaime? Will you claim the throne for yourself? Rule in your sister's name? Or shackle yourself to Cersei's ambition?" Jaime heard a murmur among the host behind his father. Soldiers exchanged uneasy glances. Some distraught at serving a mad king. Others horrified at the idea of facing their own kin in battle. Cersei, standing at his side in the white and gold cloak of the kingdom's new protectors, drew a slow breath and spoke for the first time. "I stand with him, my lord." Her voice trembled on the last words, but she did not falter. "Let the realm judge whether mercy for the innocent or vengeance for the mad is the greater crime." A shadow passed over Tywin's face. He looked at his daughter with a father's pride mingled with a lord's calculation. Then he turned back to Jaime. "Then draw steel, Jaime," he said, "and let us see which oath holds truer." Jaime drew his sword. The steel rang clear in the still air. He felt Cersei tremble at his side. Beside them, Barristan Selmy laid a restraining hand on Jaime's shoulder. Silent counsel in one pressed finger. "Have you no other way?" The old knight of the King's Guard pleaded, voice low. "There must be a path through counsel, alliance, something beyond blood." Jaime glanced at Barristan, then at his father. He heard the distant roar of a gathering crowd beyond the gates. Behind Tywin, Lannister captains urged their men into two ranks. Behind Jaime, the city watch and loyal captains formed a smaller line. "I will not stain my blade in a pointless war, Sir Barristan," Jaime said quietly. "If my father chooses steel over speech, then the realm may see if he fights for justice or for power." He stepped forward, sword at the ready. Tywin responded in kind, shield raised. Then came the hush before the storm, the moment of impossible calm. Suddenly, a horn sounded from the ramparts of the Red Keep. A lone rider, herald's standard flying, thundered down the road and dismounted before Jaime and Tywin. His cloak bore the colors of House Tyrell, green and gold, and his face was flush with haste. "My lords," he called, "messengers from High Garden bear urgent word. The Tyrells will not suffer our house to destroy itself. They propose mediation, a council of princes and southern lords to settle this dispute peacefully under penalty of outlaw." Tywin's eyes narrowed. Mediation? By Mace Tyrell's sons? He who was once my vassal now assumes to judge my house. The herald raised a hand. Your Grace, Highgarden fears the chaos that would follow civil war. They bring hosts to intervene if necessary, but they prefer a council to swords. Behind the herald, Cersei drew a sharp breath. Jaime felt hope stir. Barristan covered his mouth with a gauntlet, eyes bright with relief. Tywin's jaw clenched. For a moment, it seemed he would refuse. His gaze flicked to the waiting Crown's men, battle already poised on the knife's edge. Then a deep weight seemed to settle on his shoulders, the realization that to win this war he might lose something far greater. He lowered his sword. Dust rose from the courtyard as the Lannister host followed suit. Jaime exhaled, allowing the tension to drain. He closed his eyes for a heartbeat, feeling the promise of peace. Very well, Tywin said at last. Let the Tyrells send their representatives. Let us open our gates to them. Jaime sheathed his sword and turned to Barristan. The old knight released him, bowing with a faint smile. Cersei, stepping forward, found her brother's hand and squeezed it. You did well, she whispered. Within the hour, envoys from Highgarden arrived. 2 Tyrell scions, Lord Luther and Lady Margaery, accompanied by their guards. They rode in palanquins through the reopened gates, greeted by tentative cheers from the citizens, cheering the prospect of unity over blood. Inside the Hand's Tower, converted to an interim council chamber, Jaime presided alongside Tywin, Cersei, and representatives of all the great houses who would attend. Staunch Freys, pragmatic Aerons, wary Martells, neutral Greyjoys. The hall was alive with the murmur of voices, hands moving over parchments, heated debates over protocol. Jaime watched, absorbing every nuance. Beyond the formalities, he felt a new rhythm in the realm, an awareness that the old ways must bend or break. Midday found the council seated around a vast, circular table. Jaime took the seat opposite his father, Cersei at his left, Tywin to his right. The Tyrells presented their terms. First, a ceasefire to hold until the king's fate was decided. Second, the formation of a regency council to protect the infant Princess Rhaella. Third, trials for those accused of crimes under the Mad King's orders. Barristan Selmy, in his immaculate white, rose to speak. I propose that the Mad King, Aerys the Suttock, be placed under guard in the Dragon Pit, where he may no longer issue destructive commands, and await trial before the High Council of Westeros. A hush fell. Tywin's brow furrowed, but Cersei leaned forward. He must answer for his crimes, she said, but not in chains, for fear that mercy might cost us support. Jaime nodded. He will be confined and attended by the King's Guard. No harm will come to him until the council decrees. Luther Tyrell rose, favoring Cersei with a respectful bow. And what of Lord Tywin's claim on the Iron Throne? Will he relinquish command to the council, or maintain authority as protector until the princess comes of age? Tywin's fingers twitched on the table's edge. He glanced at Jaime and Cersei before speaking. I will cede my martial command to this council, he said slowly, but I will remain Warden of the West and Guardian of the Crownlands, in title and responsibility, until the princess may rule in her own right. A ripple of assent spread. Cersei's hand squeezed Jaime's beneath the table, and he offered her a private, triumphant smile. The terms advanced a fragile peace and bound every great house to a common purpose. By dusk, the council adjourned with pen and seal. Envoys would carry the accords to the farthest holds. Word would be sent to Dorne and the Iron Islands. The city felt the shift. The towers of the Red Keep no longer loomed with dread, but as guardians of hope. As Jaime and Cersei strode through the silent corridors toward the Solar, Barristan joined them, voice as gentle as a father's. You have done more today than many nights in a lifetime. The realm owes you much. Jaime looked to Cersei, whose pale face glowed with relief. We built this together, he said. Barristan inclined his head. Together, he echoed. Now comes the true test, to maintain this peace, to see justice done, without turning the council's power into another tyranny. Jaime's gaze hardened with resolve. Then let us sleep tonight. Tomorrow, We face the realm's judgment with open hands and clear hearts. Cersei linked her arm through Jaime's. With you always, she whispered. And as they passed beneath torchlight, the joint shadows of the Lannister siblings stretched long on the walls. Two figures forged by loyalty, mercy, and the unbreakable bonds of blood and honor, poised to lead a kingdom from the crucible of madness into the uncertain dawn of a new age. Oh. The evening candles in the Hand's tower guttered low as Jaime Lannister settled into his chair, the weight of the day's events pressing upon his shoulders like the world itself. Cersei stood at the window, gazing out over the silent city that now breathed uneasy peace. Beyond the parapets, the moon cast pale light over rooftops blackened by fire, and in the distance, the distant holler of relief parties still rang through the alleys. Jaime watched his sister's silhouette, tall, regal, her dark hair loose about her shoulders, before rising and crossing the room to join her. She did not turn at his approach, her slender hands clenched at the sill. "They sent word," she said softly, voice brittle with fatigue. "From Storm's End, Lord Baratheon will not lend his banners until we confirm the throne's legitimacy." Jaime rested a hand on her shoulder. "He tests us, as he should. He needs to know the realm is mended, not fractured." She nodded, though her lips trembled. "And Dorne?" Jaime took a breath. "Princess Nymeria's envoy arrived at sundown. She demands concessions for Dornish autonomy, marriage alliance or lands returned." Cersei turned to him sharply. "We cannot give them the reach, not after Tyrell's betrayal. We risk angering the Stormlands if we give too much to Dorne." Jaime sighed, recalling the terms hammered out in council. A marriage between their cousin Myrcella and Nymeria's second son, a promise that Dorne's customs be respected in matters of succession. Not ideal, but necessary to keep Oberyn's daughters from striking out alone. "We give enough to bind them," he said. "And no more. Myrcella is safe in Highgarden. She will come to the Reach as a bride, not a hostage." Cersei studied him, eyes calculating. "And what of our Uncle Kevin? He writes that we should recall the Tyrell host before the wedding, and replace them with sworn knights of the Westerlands." Jaime frowned. "Replacing an army in the field invites suspicion. Let them hold the Reach until the council calls the banners home. Then we station our own garrison along the Mander's banks." She let out a breath, nodding once. "You see farther than father ever did." A sudden knock echoed at the door. They exchanged a glance before Cersei answered, admitting Barristan Selmy, his silver hair gleaming in the firelight. "My lords," he said with respect, inclining his head to both. "Sir Bronn awaits beyond the gate. He bears troubling news." Jaime's pulse quickened. He and Cersei followed the old knight down the spiral stairs, past guards on watch and scribes copying parchments by flickering torches. Outside, Ser Bronn stood beside a courier from the Riverlands, sun-bleached and mud-spattered, clutching a sealed dispatch. Bronn bowed. "My lord, lady, I bring word from Lord Edmure Tully. The trident is secured, but Ra's men press close. They report that a third faction, outlaws calling themselves the Brotherhood without banners, have seized the crossroads, robbing both our forces and the Tullys. They claim to fight for the small folk, but pillage as fiercely as any robber." Jaime took the parchment and broke the seal. The letter within described how the Brotherhood, under a red-hooded leader, had grown bold, sacking villages, waylaying trade caravans, even threatening the King's Road itself. He frowned. "We cannot have lawlessness spreading beyond the city. The truce is fragile enough." Cersei's eyes narrowed. "We need to send a force to restore order. But if we draw too many men from King's Landing, Tywin might seize the chance to march on us." Jaime clenched his jaw. "Then we send a small, swift force, the Golden Company perhaps, under experienced commanders, pledged to the Council's cause. They can strike at the Brotherhood, secure the caravans, and hold the crossroads." Bronn nodded. 100 well-armed men can do what 1,000 banners cannot." "Very well," Jaime said. "I'll draft the orders. Cersei, will you summon the Golden Company's commander?" "Ben House." She turned, already striding toward the gate. "I'll have him here within the hour." Jaime watched her go, then turned back to Barristan Selmy. "Thank you, sir. Your counsel continues to guide me." Barristan smiled gently. "You have the heart of a lion, Sir Jaime, and the compassion of a true knight. The realm is lucky to have you." Late into the night, Jaime remained at his desk, quill in hand, drafting missives and strategies. He wrote to Storm's End, reaffirming the Baratheon terms, and promising swift aid once the council confirmed the new regency. He wrote to Highgarden, sealing Myrcella's marriage pact, and requesting safe passage for her retinue. He wrote to Dorne, accepting the alliance terms while preserving the kingdom's integrity. Between letters, he paused to review maps of the Riverlands, marking roads and villages under threat. His gaze lingered on the Trident, where banners would soon rally to root out the Brotherhood. He recalled the stories Bronn had told, of men and women suffering roadside murders, of merchants whose wares lay rotting in marauders' camps. It was a stain that might spread if left unchecked. He dipped his quill again, crafting a third letter to the Golden Company. "By the authority of the High Council, and in the name of the realm's peace, you are directed to ride to the Riverlands, secure the King's Road between Harrenhal and River Run, and aid Lord Edmure Tully in restoring order. Under no circumstance shall you engage in depredations against small folk. You are entrusted with a sacred duty to defend innocence and protect the realm's commerce. Return when the crossroads are safe, or when released by the council's decree." And now, he sealed the letter with Lannister wax and signed it with the twin-headed lion. Then he rose to pace the room, the candlelight throwing his lean silhouette against the walls. He thought of Cersei, and of Tywin's inevitable reaction when news of the Golden Company's deployment reached Casterly Rock. His father prided himself on military might. A company of mercenaries might irk him, but mercy and order, Jaime knew, were worth Tywin's displeasure. Outside, a horn echoed faintly through the silent courtyard. Jaime paused, listening. The wind had shifted. The cool breath of dawn crept through the window. He sat again, heart pounding at the dawn of a new campaign. One not for conquest, but for justice. When the first pale light of morning filtered through the narrow-slit windows, Jaime sealed the last missive and summoned his captains. Their faces, haggard from war's end yet bright with purpose, greeted him as he entered the chamber. He laid out the tasks: the Riverlands expedition, the garrison rotations in the Reach, diplomatic envoys to the Stormlands and Dorne, preparations to welcome the Tyrell and Baratheon hosts into the city once peace was secure. As they discussed logistics, horses, provisions, coin, Jaime felt a fierce pride. This was leadership of a different sort. Measured, merciful, but unshakably firm. Cersei entered then, her dark eyes alight. "The Golden Company is ready," she announced. 500 swords, all sworn to your orders." Jaime rose and crossed the room, taking her hand. "Then let us pray they prove as true as their name." Outside the city stirred. Bells tolled from the great septi, calling the faithful to prayer. From the streets below came a chorus of voices. Children laughing, vendors hawking bread, smiths striking iron. King's Landing, once on the brink of ruin, was waking to a new day. Jaime Lannister, protector of the realm, stood at the window beside Cersei and watched that dawn. In his heart burned the conviction that mercy, allied to strength, could forge a kingdom stronger than any built on fear or bloodlust. The road ahead would be long, more battles to fight, more hearts to win, but he would walk it with sword in hand, not to slay, but to defend. And at his side, the woman he loved. Shield and counsel both would ride into that uncertain future, together forging a legend that would outshine the darkest folly of kings. The clang of steel and the thunder of hooves faded behind them as Jaime and Cersei rode out through the Lion's Gate, the morning sun chasing away the last wisps of night's chill. Ahead lay the city's main thoroughfare, Barrister's Road, renamed for Sir Barristan's steadfast counsel, where citizens gathered to see them pass. Children waved bits of fabric dyed in Lannister red and Targaryen black, their faces bright with hope. Jaime lifted a gauntlet in salute, and Cersei, seated side saddle upon the same destrier, inclined her head with regal grace. They paused before the gates of the dragon pit, its massive iron doors swung wide. Inside, the cavernous arena reeked of dust and damp. Torches glowed along the high walls, illuminating the gathered Kingsguard, who stood solemnly at ease around the dais where the Mad King had last held court. There, beneath the cavern's vaulted domes, sat Aerys II, bound at the wrists by steel shackles. His violet velvet gown was tattered, and his silver hair framed a face as hollowed as a skull. Yet his eyes flickered with the faint embers of rage and confusion. Jaime dismounted and approached, his white cloak whispering across the stone. Beside him, Barristan Selmy knelt to inspect the king's bonds, as Cersei and a small assembly of counselors, Tyrell envoys, a Baratheon herald, and a Tully courier stepped forward to witness. Jaime's voice carried through the hush, firm and calm. "Your Grace," he said, kneeling on one knee before the Iron Throne's empty ghost at the riot of stone behind Aerys. "In the name of the High Council, and by the authority of the realm you once ruled, you are confined here to answer for the crimes committed under your orders. You shall neither issue command, nor bear sway over crown or kingdom, until adjudged by this council." "Maine." Aerys's laugh, cracked and hollow, echoed like a dirge. "You dare bind Jaime Lannister, my Kingslayer, and strip me of word and power?" His gaze flicked to his old Kingsguard, but Barristan met it with unwavering courage. "I dare," Jaime replied, rising to his feet. "Because mercy is the true strength of a king, and justice the highest virtue of a ruler." Behind them, Cersei placed her hand upon Jaime's shoulder. "Let him be cared for by the Kingsguard," she said. "Harm him not, but prevent any counsel of folly." Barristan bowed and signaled two silent brethren to escort Aerys to the inner keeps of the dragon pit, where he would remain under guard. As the gates clanged shut, Jaime felt a sorrow sharper than any blade. He had spared the life of the man he once vowed to serve, even as he bound that life in chains. The ride back to the Red Keep was nearly wordless. The city beyond the dragon pit gates had changed already. Food carts rolled into the streets, merchants reopened their stalls, stonemasons and carpenters began repairing shattered walls. The scars of war remained, but so did an undercurrent of renewal. As they passed the tip of the Hand's Tower, Jaime dismounted once more. He and Cersei entered the council chamber, where Tywin Lannister waited, flanked by his uncle Kevin and two stern-faced bannermen. Tywin's presence cast a long shadow, but today his face was unreadable. "Father," Jaime said, inclining his head, "the king is secured. The council meets at dawn to set the trial. I trust the terms we agreed upon stand." Tywin studied his son's face, the line of his jaw, the conviction in his eyes. Slowly, he nodded. "They stand. If Aerys's crimes are as grievous as you say, let him answer before the realm." His gaze shifted to Cersei. "My lady, you have served the crown well." Cersei inclined her head, eyes bright but steady. "I serve all the people of the Seven Kingdoms, as do we all." Tywin's lips curved in a fleeting, grudging approval. "Then let the council convene. I will see to the reach of summons." That night, Jaime and Cersei sat alone in the solar overlooking the harbor. The moon's path shimmered upon Blackwater Rush, and lanterns glowed along the quays. Cersei's hand traced the patterns of the carved table, her gaze distant. "Do you think the trial will satisfy the lords?" she asked softly. "Will they believe the Mad King's guilt beyond doubt?" Jaime looked out at the river. "They must. The evidence is in the ashes of the city, in the charred tombs of wildfire, in the testimonies of alchemists and burned corpses. None can deny it." She turned to him, grief in her green eyes. "I still hear his voice sometimes," she whispered, "calling me to madness, to purge the world in fire." He rose and drew her into his arms. "He is bound now," he said. "What power remains to his voice comes only from fear, and fear has no place here." She rested her cheek upon his shoulder. "I fear for you," she admitted. "For us. Father's patience thins with every day we defy the old ways." Jaime kissed her hair. "Let him test us. If it brings the realm to order, we shall endure." Dawn revealed a city hung with banners of every great house: Lannister shields, Tyrell roses, Baratheon stags, Tully fish. Representatives gathered in the Great Sept, its high arches and stained glass windows washed in morning light. Crowds pressed beyond the doors, the air alive with murmured anticipation. Inside, the High Council took seats before the altar. Tywin Lannister as Warden of the West, Margaery Tyrell as mediator, the Baratheon Herald as voice of the Stormlands, the Dornish envoy in vibrant vestments, a lone envoy from the Iron Islands. Jaime and Cersei stood at the steps beside Ser Barristan, who held the mute form of the Mad King in tow. Maester Luwin, summoned from the Citadel, rose first. He read the charges, ordering the massacre of the Riverlands at Harrenhal, the incineration of Rickard and Brandon Stark, the placement of wildfire caches within the city. Each item rang with such horror that many in the crowd gasped. Aerys' only protest was a whispered denial. They lied. They must burn. When the charges concluded, Jaime spoke on behalf of the council. His voice was steady, echoing beneath the vaulted ceiling. Lord Aerys II Targaryen, you stand accused by your own people of crimes against the realm. Will you answer these charges before the Seven and the gathering of houses? Then so. Aerys' eyes flickered between Jaime and Cersei. In that frozen moment, the hall's bustle stilled. Then the old king's shoulders sagged, as though the weight of his actions, once hidden behind crown and fury, bore down upon him at last. "I will speak," he admitted, voice thin. Thus began the trial of the Mad King, a spectacle unlike any seen in Westeros. Witnesses called friends and foes alike. The smith who forged the barrels of wildfire, the maester who tended the children burned in the Red Keep's kitchens, the former master of arms who fled when ordered to slay the royal family. And with each testimony, Aerys' defenses eroded. First his reason, then his dignity, until he sat unmoving as a guilty man. After 3 days of hearings, the verdict was pronounced. Guilty on all counts. The council debated his fate, but Tywin rose and spoke simply. He shall live, as his life makes clear the price of tyranny. Agreement followed swiftly. Mercy, they declared, was the realm's bulwark against vengeance. Aerys would be imprisoned within the Dragon Pit's inner sanctum, watched by the King's Guard, until the princess came of age. Outside the Sept, the crowd erupted into relieved cheer. Jaime and Cersei walked hand in hand down the steps. The whispered prayers that followed them felt like benedictions. May the realm be guided by mercy. May steel never again slay innocence. Yet beyond the gates, the war's embers still smoldered. Jaime knew that peace was not a single dawn, not a season of toil. The Riverlands to pacify, the free companies to disband, the bannermen to reassure. But as he mounted his horse beside Cersei, watching the sun gild the spires of the Sept and the Red Keep alike, he felt that for the first time the realm's future glowed with true promise. He spurred forward at her side, the roar of cheering behind him, the weight of his choice burning bright in his chest. A choice born of mercy, forged in defiance, and carried by the hope of a kingdom healed. And as they rode into that new day, Jaime Lannister's legend was reborn. No longer the Kingslayer, but the King's protector, champion of justice, guardian of peace, and the man who would see the realm flourish under the light of mercy rather than the shadow of fear. Okay. Jaime Lannister felt the weight of his responsibilities settle upon him like a mantle of steel and silk as he rode through the streets of Kings, landing at the head of the newly formed royal peacekeepers. The city had been granted a measure of calm it had not known in years. Bakeries that once lay cold now released the smell of fresh bread. Smithies rang with the hammer's rhythm. Children darted between stalls, unafraid of marauders. Yet the scars of siege and rebellion marred every corner. Craters in the road where siege engines had battered the walls, charred timbers in half-rebuilt hovels, the skeleton of a burned tower leaning like a wounded beast against the night sky. Beside him, Cersei rode with equal gravity. Her white and gold cloak, the new livery of the protectors of the realm, fluttering in the breeze. Though she bore the title of Queen Regent only in a ceremonial sense, Until the council determined the young princess's formal regency, her influence was undeniable. Lords, knights, and commoners alike bowed or inclined their heads as she passed, whispering blessings on her mercy and her brother's wisdom. Their destination was the watchtower at the northern gate, where Sir Bronn of the Blackwater, recently elevated to captain of the Peacekeepers, had summoned Jaime to review reports of recent unrest. A patrol of Golden Company mercenaries had secured the Riverlands, but rumors persisted of brigands regrouping among the ruined keeps and disbanded soldiers from both sides, eager for coin and vengeance. Jaime dismounted at the tower's base, immediately greeted by Bronn's sardonic grin. The sellsword-turned commander looked every inch the veteran soldier. Cloak stained with mud, sword scabbard nicked, the badge of the King's Guard pinned conspicuously on his breast. Behind him, 10 peacekeepers, some in Lannister red, some in King's Guard white, stood at ease, their expressions a mixture of pride and fatigue. "Sir Jaime," Bronn called, stepping forward. "Good to see you on your own 2 feet and not a desk. The city's quiet, but the roads north of here are like a hungry maw. Bandits took a merchant caravan yesterday, and half a dozen riders never returned." "Damn." Jaime frowned, glancing northward, where the Red Keep's spires loomed behind them. "Who leads these brigands?" Bronn's eyes narrowed. "A man calling himself the Black Wolf. Claims he's avenging slaughtered villages along the Roserad. A former sellsword with a taste for vengeance and blood." "Nanand." Cersei joined them, hand resting lightly on Jaime's shoulder. "He is not the only one who might see himself as avenger," she said. "We must be careful that our peacekeepers do not become tyrants too." Jaime bowed his head. "We ride at first light, with Bronn's company and 30 trusty peacekeepers. We will root out the bandits and bring them to justice, or else convince them to lay down arms and serve the realm." Bronn smirked. "I like the sound of that. Any traitors who refuse mercy find a swift end." Cersei offered a small smile. "Mercy tempered with steel then." That night, Jaime walked the ramparts of the watchtower with Sir Barristan Selmy. The old knight leaned on the merlons, gazing out across Blackwater Rush and the distant outline of the Dragon Pit. "Your plan is sound," Barristan said quietly. "But mercy is a flame easily extinguished by the winds of anger. Be certain your orders reach every man under your command." Jaime closed his eyes, tasting the wind's chill. "I will." He paused. "Father's iron will is tempered by blood. Mine must be tempered by compassion. Yet I fear I lack the latter without the former." Barristan laid a hand on his gauntlet. "Compassion is born of choice, not of nature. You have chosen it. That makes you stronger than any tyrant who rules by fear." "Dandy." Jaime opened his eyes, meeting Barristan's steady gaze. "Then tomorrow, we bring that compassion beyond these walls." At dawn, the peacekeepers mustered outside the gate, banners of Lannister red and white fluttering against the pale sky. Jaime, Cersei, Bronn, and Barristan rode at the vanguard, followed by 100 men, half veterans of the Golden Company, half Lannister levies, resworn to peace. The gate clanged shut behind them, sealing King's Landing until their return. The Roserad stretched northward through gentle hills and scattered farmsteads, their fields still blackened by wildfire, but already dotted with new shoots of green. The peacekeepers rode in disciplined order, shields linked, flanked by scouts who peered into the underbrush for signs of ambush. They reached the ruins of Harriston's Hold by midday. The once proud keep lay in splinters, its towers toppled and walls fractured. A handful of villagers, survivors of the last sack, watched them warily from the boundary of a burned orchard. Bronn dismounted and strode forward, hand raised in greeting. "We come bearing justice and mercy," he called. "If you pledge loyalty to the realm and aid our mission, you shall be spared confiscations." A gray-haired farmer stepped forward, eyes red-rimmed. "My family starved when the last king's men took our grain. We have no banner now but our own." Jaime dismounted as well, drawing the farmer's gaze. "We will restore the grain stores, repair the walls, but on one condition, that you help us find the Black Wolf and his men, so they cannot harm innocents again." The farmer hesitated, then nodded. "I saw them camp near the Weeping Reaches. They took prisoners to interrogate them for tales of Alistair's battalion. If you ride fast, you might catch them off guard." "Da." Jaime offered the man a small pouch of coins. "Your service is honored. Tell your neighbors the realm stands with them." As the peacekeepers remounted, Jaime felt the weight of each life in his hand, the fragile trust of men and women who had lost everything. He spurred forward, Bronn and Barristan at his side, and the company galloped onward. By late afternoon, they sighted the bandit camp in a grove of silver birches beside a small stream. Tents of dark cloth flapped in the breeze. The captive merchant riders lay bound against trees. The black wolf stood tall among them, a wolf's pelt over one shoulder, hand resting on the hilt of a coarse sword. Jaime raised his horn. The blast echoed through the grove, startling birds from the branches. The peacekeepers dismounted and formed a circle around the camp. The black wolf strode forward. "So the lion and his kin come to punish me for righteous vengeance," he spat. "You are no kings. You are usurpers, hiding behind empty crowns." Jaime stepped into the clearing, cloak billowing. "This realm has no need for vengeance. It needs justice. Release these men and answer peacefully for your deeds." The bandit laughed. "My deeds avenge slaughtered farms, raped widows, butchered children. What justice is there in letting my kind live?" Barristan advanced, blade in hand. "Mercy is not weakness. Lay down your steel and report for judgment." The black wolf drew his sword. "Then judge me by the same mercy you show my victims." He lunged. Steel clanged as Jaime intercepted his strike, parrying with a practiced twist of the wrist. The peacekeepers closed in, surrounding the combatants in a ring of steel. Bronn fought a pair of bandits at his back, dispatching them with brutal efficiency. Jaime stepped back, catching the black wolf's sword on his breastplate. "You fill your belly with vengeance and your heart with hate. But that hate will not bring back the innocent." They circled, blades flashing. The wolf's pelt rustled as he shifted. Jaime feinted high, then thrust low, but the bandit twisted aside, boots skidding in the churned earth. They traded blows, clangs, parries, and sparks dancing where metal met metal. At the rim of his vision, Jaime saw the bound riders strain against their bonds. Cheering their protector, he heard Cersei's voice. "Hold the line," and the peacekeepers formed tighter around the camp. With one sudden shift, Jaime disarmed the black wolf, sending his sword clattering. He pressed the pommel to the bandit's chest. "Yield," the man panted, chest heaving beneath the pelt. Then, with a slow nod, he dropped to one knee. "I yield." Jaime signaled to Barristan, who relieved the wolf of his pelt and bound him in coils of rope. The peacekeepers freed the captives. Jaime walked among them, ensuring none bore wounds beyond healing. Then he addressed the bandits. "You will be taken to King's Landing to stand trial before the council. If found guilty, you will be pardoned for crimes born of desperation. If you choose to serve the realm thereafter. If you resist, you will be judged by blade." The black wolf straightened, eyes flashing with bitter pride. "Then I choose service." Bronn spat on the ground. "You'd best mean it, wolf." Jaime nodded. "Spare his life. Let him learn mercy." Then, turning to the freed merchants, he offered them gold and wagons to carry their goods. As they wept and blessed him, Jaime felt a surge of purpose, to protect all who could not protect themselves. Weeks passed as the peacekeepers swept through the riverlands, rooting out bandits, rebuilding bridges, escorting traders. Jaime and Cersei oversaw each step, signing charters to return land to displaced families, negotiating truces with ragged lords, and ensuring the Golden Company laid down their arms and accepted service under the crown. In that time, they received word of the Baratheon host finally mustering at Storm's End, and of the Dornish envoy returning with word that the marriage pact was accepted. The Reach's banners fluttered home to Highgarden once the council decreed, and the Riverlands sang praises for the Lion's siblings who had tamed the wild roads. Yet not all was peaceful. Whispers reached them of a rebellion stirring in the Vale, where a faction of Arryn knights bristled at southern rule. Jaime convened the council. Tywin, now seated as guardian of the West, Marguerite Tyrell, mediator, the Baratheon herald, and the Martell ambassador. They agreed to send a diplomatic mission, Lady Cersei and Sir Barristan, to parley with the Vale Lords, offering them greater autonomy and seats on the Regency Council. As Cersei departed for the Eyrie, escorted by Dornish and Tyrell guards, Jaime stayed behind in King's Landing to oversee the final phases of reconstruction. Each day he walked the streets, learning the names of shopkeepers, giving coins to children who showed scars of hunger, and listening to the concerns of common folk. His white cloak became a symbol not just of mercy but of presence. He was a king among people, not above them. One late afternoon, as the sun sank blood-red behind the Red Keep, Jaime stood on a rebuilt section of the city wall, gazing out at the distant misty peaks of the Vale. A Tully herald approached with letters. Cersei's envoy had stalled at the Bloody Gate, threatened by cliffside skirmishers, but Lady Cersei herself negotiated their passage with dignity and grace. A shorter note followed. Cersei would return soon, bearing an accord that included the Arryn Lords on terms that guaranteed the Val's rights. Jaime smiled, absorbing the victory. Below him, rebuilding crews replaced shattered stones. Carpenters fitted new timbers to charred beams. Children played in the newly flowing fountain at the city's center. Merchants crowded around restored stalls. The city's heart beat again. He leaned against the parapet, closing his eyes, and for a moment felt the weight of it all ease. Mercy had carried him farther than steel alone. His defiance of the Mad King had become an act of creation, building rather than destroying. When Cersei returned 2 days later, her face alight with triumph and wearied by the climb, Jaime greeted her on the walls. She embraced him, and for a long moment they stood there, gazing at the world they had saved. Behind them, the city's lights twinkled like stars brought to earth. Ahead lay the Aerys towers, the Dornish sands, the golden fields of the Reach. And everywhere, the lords and commoners of Westeros stirred at the promise of a new age. An age born of mercy, tempered by strength, and led by two siblings whose choice to defy madness had forged a legend of hope. Together, Jaime and Cersei looked eastward, toward the sunrise that would cast their realm in a new light. The road to healing would be long, but their hands were entwined, their hearts resolved. And as they rode back into the city's embrace, the cry that rose from the streets was not one of bloodlust or fear, but of joy and renewal. Long live the protectors of the realm. Long live the lion and his sister. Okay. Jaime awoke before dawn to the soft clatter of rain against the shutters. King's Landing lay quiet beneath the sky's leaden veil, as though holding its breath for what was to come. He dressed in the muted gold and white of the peacekeepers, and descended to the courtyard, where Cersei stood beside a brazier, her cloak drawn close against the chill. Before her lay a parchment, sealed with the direwolf of the north. She looked up, eyes bright with purpose. Word from the Eyrie, she said, handing him the scroll. They agreed to join the Regency Council, but their terms are harsh. They demand that the Vale's roads and passes be declared inviolate, policed by their own knights rather than ours. Jaime broke the seal and read, brow furrowed. They fear we will move armies through the mountains of the moon, he murmured. Yet, if we concede too much, the realm fractures. Cersei met his gaze. We must find balance. Offer them a seat at the city watch and joint patrols of the Bloody Gate, under a mixed command, and promise the Vale's lords representation at every council meeting. Many. He folded the letter. Agreed. I will ride to the Bloody Gate myself at first light to seal the agreement. He paused. And there is more. Ship captains from the Iron Islands have been spotted off Blackwater Bay. They claim to seek trade, but their light escorts betray a raiding party. A long shadow passed over Cersei's face. The Ironborn see chaos as opportunity. If we cannot stop them here, they will ravage the coast and undo what we have built. No. Jaime nodded. Then we cannot delay. I will send word to Lord Gawain Westerling to muster our small fleet at Duskendale, and I shall go in person to meet these corsairs at sea. She gripped his arm. Promise me you will return." He kissed her brow. "I promise." The wind tore at Jaime's cloak as he stood on the quarterdeck of the war galley Sea's Mercy. Its carved prow a snarling kraken. The storm lanterns bobbed, and banners snapped in the salt spray. Behind him, a dozen ships of the Westerling contingent and 2 of the royal galleys formed a protective line. On the horizon, half a dozen longships rode the swell, their oars idle as they drifted closer. The 8-masted royal flagship heaved with every wave, and Jaime steadied himself against the rail, scanning the nimble iron-borne vessels. Their black sails were unfurled, keen as raven wings. A horn blast echoed from the flagship. Jaime mounted the gangplank to address the mixed council gathered in the captain's cabin: Lord Gaun's stern face, a Lycene navigator, and 2 of the Vale's knights newly arrived. "We give these men a final chance," Jaime said, voice firm. "If they bear trade goods and swear oath to the Regency Council, they may anchor under clear rules of port. If not, we will chase them into the Narrows and break their fleet." The Lycene whispered of narrow reefs west of the Blackwater Rush, ideal for ambush. The Vale Knights offered to guide the royal fleet through hidden channels so that the Ironborn could not flee. Jaime Lannister glowered. "I have broken more Kraken's bones than any man alive. Let me loose among them." Jaime smiled tightly. "We ride as one arm. Mercy first. If they refuse, then steel." On the deck of the nearest longship, the Ironborn captain, tall-bearded, his chainmail painted black, watched the royal line approach. He twisted his salt-stained braids and called to his helmsman. "Signal them," he thundered, and a horn sounded, its note jagged as broken stone. "We come to trade and mercy, O Lion of Lannisport. May our axes find no edge in your holdfast." Jaime raised a hand in greeting, then turned to the helmsman. "Let them come aboard. But keep your men at the rail, weapons ready." The Ironborn chief paced the deck as he stepped onto the Sea's Mercy, where Jaime awaited with a small guard. Rain plastered both their cloaks to their bodies. The 2 men regarded one another with mutual respect and ancient distrust. "I am Ragnar Pike," the Ironborn captain said, voice low and gravelly. "We seek only the right to moor and unload our catch, North Saltcod and driftwood from Skagos, then to depart unharmed." Jaime studied him. "The realm's law stands. No raiding under penalty of war. If you bring no weapons, and if your oars are bound, and your men unarmed, you may trade in King's Landing under port regulations. All ships will strike oars upon landing until customs are paid." Ragnar's shoulder creaked as he shrugged. "We will strike our oars, but our axes remain ours by right of Ironborn birth. If your laws forbid them in the hold, we'll fasten them to our belts." "Now." Jaime's hand fell to the pommel of his sword. "Then consider your axes as cargo, subject to inspection and tariff." The Ironborn laughed, low and slow, but did not draw his blade. "So be it, Lion. We come as merchants by your mercy." Back on the quay, Cersei oversaw the unloading of cod barrels and crates of driftwood, while customs officers counted coins and inspectors sat cross-legged among the sacks. The Ironborn men eyed the city with hungry interest, but waited as their captain had sworn. Jaime conferred with the Vale Knights under a newly painted archway, a joint guard post, its lintel inscribed with the paired arms of Aerys and Lannister. He signed the formal treaty. Trade rights granted, tribute in corn and iron levied, and a promise of no future raids under pain of reprisal. As the last barrel was rolled away, Ragnar met him once more on the quay. He grasped Jaime's forearm in a warrior's clasp. "You are a rare king, Lannister. Mercy and steel in equal measure." Jaime inclined his head. "May your journey north bring no storms." Ragnar smiled thinly. "Storms are our inheritance, but today yours ease upon us." He turned and strode back to his longship. By midsummer, King's Landing had grown into a crossroads of commerce and cautious peace. Ships from Lycene Mar docked alongside the Ironborn, the Reach's grain fleets, and the Dornish trade galleons. The city's markets overflowed. The sept bells rang for more marriages than funerals, and the smiths forged new steel for plowshares, as often as for sword blades. Yet in the shadows of the narrow sea, a darker tide gathered. In the ruins of Harrenhal, young Sir Hoster Frey, embittered by the king's madness and the Lannister ascendancy, gathered his household guard. He claimed the Riverlands had not recovered, and that Jaime's mercy had been a guise to subjugate the countryside. From the haunted halls of the Tully Castle, outlaw knights rode east, swearing banner for banner in each passing village. Jaime and Cersei learned of these stirrings from Maester Luwin, whose missives arrived like laments. They called a council in the Hand's Tower under the vaulted ceiling, its stones still warm from the summer sun. Tywin loomed at the head, silent and watchful, while the Tyrell and Baratheon envoys bristled with concern. "We must act decisively," Cersei said, voice firm as she unfurled a map of the Riverlands. "Hoster Frey's treachery cannot stand. We cannot allow discord to poison what we have built." Barristan Selmy nodded. "A small force of peacekeepers and loyal bannermen should ride to hold the crossings while we send envoys to parley. If he refuses, we unmask him as traitor." Jaime folded the map. "I will lead the host. Mercy first. If he breaks our terms, his castle must be seized and his men sent home in chains." "Menshawand." Tywin finally spoke, voice low but steady. "Then prepare your forces. I will send Lord Westerling by sea to block any reinforcements from the twins." As they finalized their plan, the sky darkened and distant thunder rolled. A warning, or an omen. Jaime rose, cloak swirling. "Then at dawn we ride for the Riverlands, to bring mercy or steel where they are needed most." Cersei placed her hand on his arm. "Ride well, my brother. Bring them peace." He kissed her cheek. "And return for you." Outside, the city's bells tolled the hour, their notes drifting across the rooftops like a promise. A promise that mercy would endure, that justice would prevail, and that the siblings who had defied a mad king now rode out to defend the realm from its own lingering shadows. And so, with hearts resolved, and swords sheathed only until mercy failed, Jaime Lannister led his peacekeepers into the gathering storm. Jaime Lannister set forth at dawn with a company of 300 peacekeepers, the golden sun cresting the horizon as his cavalry trotted through the gates of King's Landing toward the Riverlands. Each rider bore the twin-headed lion of House Lannister, and beneath it, the white rose of the realm's mercy. As they made their way westward along the King's Road, the land bore fresh scars. Craters from siege engines, smoldering stumps where villages once stood, but signs of recovery as well. Farmers tending charred fields, smiths hammering bright blades for plowshares, children peering from makeshift hamlets. The first night out of the city, Jaime bivouacked atop a low rise overlooking a stretch of open farmland. His tent was a simple affair, plain canvas adorned only by the Red Lion banner, and within it he convened his captains. Sir Bronn of the Blackwater detailed patrol routes to secure the smaller crossroads. Sir Gawain Westerling would press south along the Roserad to intercept any reinforcements from the twins. Cersei's envoy, Lady Anya of the Dornish Marches, prepared the terms for negotiating with the Riverlords. "Hoster Frey's only strength lies in surprise," Bronn observed, rubbing the mud from his gauntleted hands. "If we guard the rivers and mountain passes, he'll be starved of men and gold." Jaime nodded. "Then we split the host. I ride north to the twins, while you and Westerling secure the fords and ferries. Lady Anya, your terms are ready to present." She unrolled a vellum scroll. "We offer him pardon for past offenses if he kneels before the High Council, returns stolen lands to the smallfolk, and disbands his private guard. Should he refuse, his banners will be forfeit and his lands granted to loyalists." "And if he tries to fight?" Jaime asked. Lady Anya's dark eyes hardened. "Then we crush him swiftly, and his men learn mercy at the edge of the sword." Jaime allowed himself a short, grim smile. "So it is written. Rest now. At first light we ride." The morning air was crisp as Jaime led a third of his force westward toward Harrenhal. Mist curled along the Trident's banks, and the castle's broken towers loomed like weary sentinels from across the river. He halted his vanguard at the riverbank and sent word to Lord Tully's steward, an old knight named Sir Hyle, requesting a meeting on neutral ground. Within the hour, Sir Hyle appeared on a small barge, his cloak water-damp and his gravel voice cautious. "Sir Jaime," he called, bowing as he disembarked. "Your peacekeepers honor the Tully lands. Let us parley at the old mill." Jaime dismounted and stepped onto the riverbank, Barristan and Selmy close behind. "Sir Hyle," he greeted. "I come to offer Lord Hoster Frey mercy, under terms laid by the High Council." Hyle's brows furrowed. "Hoster has yet to answer the summons. He claims your mercy is a trick to weaken his position." Jaime smiled thinly. "Let him see the truth for himself. Tell him I will await his reply at the mill for 2 days. Should he arrive swearing oaths to the council, he will be restored. Should he refuse, we will strike at dawn." Hyle nodded, uncertain relief flickering in his eyes. "I will send your words by raven." As Sir Hyle withdrew, Jaime surveyed his riders. "Secure the fords," he ordered. "No man moves without our leave." Bronn and Westerling organized the detachments with brisk efficiency, posting scouts in the woods and stationing men at ferries. By nightfall, the banks were silent, but for the whisper of oars and the soft murmur of sleepers. In Harrenhal, Hoster Frey paced the ruined Great Hall, his black and white Frey banner drooping in the dank air. His captains gathered round, hungry-eyed and anxious. "They dare send Lannisters into our domain," Frey scoffed, voice echoing off the shattered pillars. "But their mercy is chains and gold. I will not kneel to them." His lieutenant, Ser Malar Krakahal, hesitated. "My lord, your men will not hold the river indefinitely. The peacekeepers guard every crossing. If you fight alone." "Nan?" Hoster's face darkened. "Then let them come. They will break on our walls, and the Northmen will remember we stood for the Riverland's honor." Krakal bowed his head. "As you command." On the third morning, Jaime rode into Harrenhal's courtyard with a company of 100 peacekeepers. The great gatehouse yawned open, manned by Frey soldiers whose eyes flickered with distrust. As Jaime dismounted, Barristan Selmy stepped forward, hand extended. "Sir Hoster Frey," Barristan intoned, "I bear terms of mercy and pardon, to be ratified by your oaths before the High Council." From the tower's battlements, Hoster Frey descended, clad in chainmail over black leather, his face pale but defiant. He stopped 15 paces away, arms folded. "Lannister," he said, tone cold, "your mercy smells of weakness." Jaime held his ground. "Mercy is the strength that binds a realm. I offer you pardon if you kneel, return stolen lands and swear to defend the peace." Hoster laughed, harsh and echoing. "A pardon from a man who bound his own king in iron?" He tightened his gauntlets. "At dawn we ride through the gates and end your rebellion." Jaime raised a hand. "You have until dusk to choose." With a sneer, Frey turned and climbed the steps to the Great Hall, leaving his banner to stir in the breeze. Barristan pressed close. "The hour grows late, Sir Jaime." He nodded. "Let night fall. Tomorrow we see if mercy holds." That evening, as twilight deepened, a solitary rider galloped out of the woods toward the courtyard. He bore the half-lions and waves of House Frey, yet his expression was one of exhaustion and resolve. He spurred into the courtyard and kneeled before Jaime. "Sir Jaime," he panted, "I am Sir Malar Krakahal. My lord instructs me, Hoster Frey kneels to your mercy, returns all lands taken, and pledges his sword to the High Council." A murmur rose among the peacekeepers. Jaime's lips curved in a relieved smile. "Then let the gates open wide," he commanded. "Let Hoster Frey enter and swear before us all." Krakal sprang to his feet and galloped back, raising his horn as he rode. Within moments, Harrenhal's massive gates creaked open. From the courtyard beyond came the clang of steel as Frey soldiers resheathed swords and released captives, handing grain and coin to small folk in need. The following morning, Jaime stood before the assembled men of Frey and peacekeepers alike. Sir Hoster advanced amid the ranks, unarmed, and knelt before him. With solemn words, he swore fealty to the council, vowed restitution to the Riverlands people, and pledged his sword to peace rather than vengeance. Jaime clasped his gauntleted hand. "By this oath, you are pardoned. May your silence in peace ring louder than war's trumpet. Now. As cheers rose, Jaime felt the weight of 1,000 lives lift. Mercy had won this day. Yet in the distance, beyond the forested hills, he knew new storms gathered, loyalists to the Mad King, who still lurked in shadow, waiting to test the realm's fragile unity. But for now, the Riverlands breathed easier. Lords and small folk alike thanked the protectors of the realm, their voices carried on the wind like benedictions. Jaime and Barristan rode out with the Frey host, escorting them to River Run to formalize the treaty, their banners flying together in a testament to the power of mercy and the promise of peace, bred from steel. And as he looked eastward toward King's Landing, Jaime Lannister knew the true battle had only just begun. The battle to keep the realm whole. To forge justice not through endless war but through unbreakable bonds of mercy, honor, and unshakable resolve. Jaime's column of peacekeepers rode out from River Run at first light, the banners of Lannister gold and Tully silver fluttering side by side in the mist. The Riverlands lay subdued but wary. Here and there small villages dotted the low hills, survivors rebuilding homes and tilling fields laced with green shoots of spring grain. Jaime felt the weight of each life under his protection as a solemn pledge. The realm would not forget the devastation that had been, nor repeat its errors. He led his host southward toward the Twins, where the bridge of stone spanned the fork of the Red Fork and Green Fork of the Trident. The Freys had returned to their seat, humbled but restored, their banners once again aloft above twin towers, weathered by fire and betrayal. Beside him rode Sir Hoster Frey and Sir Malar Crackahall, both honoring the terms of their oath with a somber dignity. At the head of the bridge, Jaime halted. The morning sun glinted off the river's dark surface, and the towers rose like sentinels of judgment. Soldiers from both sides gathered at 2 paces apart, shields lowered in respect. Jaime dismounted, Barristan at his shoulder, and approached Sir Walder Frey, elder scion of the crossing, who stood uncertain on the parapet. "Sir Walder," Jaime called, voice carrying firmly. "I come in peace to see that the Frey host's return is secure under the High Council's decree." Walder Frey inclined his head, face creased in lines of age. "You honor us, Sir Jaime. The bridge is ours once more by mercy's hand as well as blood's price." Jaime dipped into a knightly bow. "By mercy we hold it. The mercy we extend is the mercy we claim for the realm. Keep your men within the walls, see that no outlaw raises steel. We ride on to Duskendale, then onwards to confront the last pockets of resistance." As the peacekeepers remounted, Walder Frey called, "May your mercy guide you as your steel guards us." Jaime acknowledged with a nod, then spurred his mount southward, heels in his saddle. Over the next fortnight, Jaime's host followed the King's Road through the rolling hills of the Crownlands. He paused at Duskendale to welcome Lord Gawain Westerling's fleet arriving from King's Landing, the late spring wind carrying the gulls' cries across the marsh. There, in the shadow of Harrenhal's distant towers, he conferred with Westerling and a small council of naval captains on how best to blockade the western coast against Ironborn raiders. "We must starve them of plunder," Westerling declared, handing Jaime a map of harbor channels. "Block the Creekwater Bay inlet at dawn. Use these shallow shoals. Their longships cannot follow." Jaime studied the chart. "Then at first light, we drown their chance of escape. Mercy granted to any who surrender unarmed. The rest we leave to the waves." The captains exchanged glances, then saluted. Westerling smiled grimly. "We ride the tide, Sir Jaime." That night Jaime ordered the cavalry and infantry aboard vessels, his own quarters crowded by the creaking timbers and the smell of tar and salt. He slept fitfully, dreams haunted by the crackle of wildfire and the faces of those lost to madness. Morning came with a horn's blast, and he watched from the quarterdeck as skiffs laden with spearmen slipped out to seal the inlet. By midday, the trap was set. Ironborn longships, lured by the promise of open sea, found their route barred by the galleys of Westerling and the sea's mercy, while archers on the shore raked their decks with arrows. Under Jaime's watchful eye, the Ironborn captain Ragnar Pike bore his standard to the helm and signaled surrender. A handful of longships, caught fast on hidden banks, capsized as their oarsmen leapt overboard, choosing water to steal at point. Jaime ordered his men to haul the stranded longships onto the marsh and send the crews in chains back to King's Landing for trial. He felt no triumph in the victory, only the grim satisfaction that fewer innocent shores would burn under Ironborn recklessness. The columns reassembled and rode westward into the rugged hills of the Westerlands, where rocky outcrops and gnarled pines marked the path to Casterly Rock. News from King's Landing arrived by Raven. Cersei had brokered an accord with the Vale, granting the Bloody Gate as a neutral pass policed by joint patrols, and Tywin's banners had agreed to serve under the Regent's Council for the duration of the princess's minority. Yet behind those successes lay new dangers. The Val's envoy warned of a secret coup among certain lords. Knights who whispered that Southern mercy was weakness, that the true rule of the Seven Kingdoms must rest in the hands of steel, not counsel. And from the Arbor came rumors of ships bound for Dragonstone, stealth vessels carrying mercenaries loyal to seeds of rebellion sown by distant exiles. Jaime pondered these threats as he descended the western slope into Casterly Rock's shadow. The city of Lannisport spread like a golden tide below, its port alive with the comings and goings of traders from Pentos, Myr, and farther. Islanders in battered skiffs brought their wares, the Dornish sold spices at open-air stalls, and blacksmiths deep in the smithies echoed the clang of industry. As he entered the Rock's grand hall, Tywin awaited him on a dais carved from marble. Cersei stood beside their father, her regal bearing tempered by fatigue. Jaime dismounted and approached. "Father," he said, bowing, "Casterly Rock stands secure, and Lannisport thrives under the realm's peace." Tywin's gaze, sharp as fine steel, appraised him. "You have served well, Jaime, but peace breeds complacency. I have words of threats from the Vale, and whispers from Griffin's Roost." Jaime nodded. "I have heard them. The Vale's agitators can be quelled with equal justice, or mercy if they kneel. As for Griffin's Roost, I will dispatch envoys to negotiate, before sending steel if they refuse." "Da." Cersei placed a hand on Jaime's arm. "And I will ride to the Eyrie once more, to bind the Vale's lords to honorable terms." Tywin nodded slowly. "Very well. But remember, mercy is earned, not given. If a man refuses peace, he invites the sword." Jaime bowed. "I carry that as my guide." Within days, Cersei's retinue departed eastward along the high road, while Jaime himself mustered a small company of heavy cavalry and select infantry to ride north through the Mountains of the Moon. He traveled by secret passes known only to the Vale Knights who had sworn to the Council, emerging at the Bloody Gate under overcast skies. There, he found a growing camp of Arryn knights arrayed with heavy lances and scarlet cloaks. Guardians turned sentinels, waiting for Cersei's arrival. Lady Lynesse Corbray, appointed by Cersei to represent the Vale Lords, greeted him at the pass's entrance. Her eyes were cold, but respectful. "Sir Jaime," she said, inclining her head. "The pass holds. My lords wait for the Lady Regent's word." "Menabwinian." He dismounted and stood in the chill wind, watching the line of spearmen beneath the vaulted cliffs. "Then peace holds here too, so long as both sides trust the other. Let no man cross without leave, and no weapons be drawn within." He turned in a slow circle. "In a fortnight, Cersei will seal the accord at King's Landing. Until then, the pass remains inviolate." Lynesse's lips curved faintly. "So it shall be written." Autumn's chill crept across the realm as Jaime returned to Casterly Rock, gathering his host for the final effort to secure Griffin's Roost. The hill castle stood proud on Crag Stand, its towers pale against the stony spires of the Dornish marches. There, a family once loyal now wavered, seeking advantage in the shifting tides of power. Jaime approached with a small diplomatic retinue. Sir Hyle the Tully Steward, Lady Anya of Dorne, and 2 Kingsguard, Barristan Selmy and Boros Blount, to bear witness. He rode beneath a banner of truce, accompanied by a handful of peacekeepers in gleaming armor. At the castle gate, Lord Mumford Fowler rode out, his face grim beneath steel helm. "Sir Jaime," he called, voicing words echoing rumors of discontent. "You come to impose mercy upon me?" Jaime dismounted and greeted Fowler with courtesy. "I come with terms as clear as my words. Pledge your loyalty to the council. Swear to protect the realm and retain your lands and title. Should you refuse, I will take the castle by force and spare no man who fights for usurpation." "No." Fowler's gaze flickered to the assembled knights and envoys, then back to Jaime. "Give me time to consider, sir." He lifted a gauntlet in salute. "By dusk, I shall answer." Jaime inclined his head. "As you will. But remember my father's words. Mercy earned is stronger than kindness given." That evening, as the sun set blood-red beyond the rock's ramparts, word came that Mumford Fowler had renounced the council's terms and sealed his gates. His banners, the hawk on silver, fluttered defiantly above the portcullis. Scouts reported the arrival of mercenaries, crossbowmen drilling atop the walls, trebuchets primed upon the courtyard. Jaime gathered his captains. "We have tried mercy," he said gravely. "Now we prepare steel." He turned to Barristan. "You lead a contingent through the sally ports at dawn. We seize the lower bailey. I will lead the vanguard at the walls." Barristan bowed. "At your command." Jaime addressed Bronn. "You bring the ladders and scaling hooks. Westerling, you guard the rear. Let no man slip through." "Them?" As his captains dispersed to ready their men, Jaime felt the weight of resolve settle in his chest. Mercy had marked every triumph so far. Where it failed, steel must follow. The life of a realm balanced on these decisions. Before dawn, the peacekeepers moved into position. In the gray half-light, siege ladders were propped against crumbling curtain walls. Sappers worked to undermine gate hinges. The echo of whispered prayers and whispered orders blended into a single relentless heartbeat. Jaime, mounted on his destrier and clad in gleaming armor, unsheathed his blade. Luminescence, its edge catching the first pale rays of morning. At his signal, the horn sounded. The vanguard clashed against Fowler's men atop the lower walls, shields and swords ringing in the cold air. Barristan's contingent surged through an unexpected breach in the sally port, cutting down guards and opening the inner gates. Jaime spurred forward, scattering crossbow bolts with a flourish of steel, and led his knights into the courtyard. Fowler, helmet off and sword raised, met him in the center. They circled, two warriors bound by duty and honor, before Jaime's blade disarmed his foe with a deft parry and riposte. The clatter of Fowler's sword on the stone echoing like a judgment bell. Jaime pressed his point at Fowler's throat. "Yield," he commanded. "Your pride has cost you mercy. Now choose life over ruin." Fowler, bloodied but unbroken, bowed his head. "I yield." Jaime spared him, binding his hands with a soft rope. As the gates opened and the rest of the peacekeepers poured in, the banners of Fowler were lowered and replaced by Lannister sigils. Mercy had failed with words, but had prevailed through force tempered by honor. In the weeks that followed, Mumford Fowler was escorted to King's Landing to stand trial before the council. His lands were placed in trust, small folk given protection and restitution, and his men offered service under the peacekeepers. No heads were struck from shoulders, no innocents were punished for their lord's folly. By winter's first snowfall, the last embers of rebellion flickered out. The Vales and Dornish ambassadors reported full compliance with the accords. The merchants of Lannisport swore their loyalty anew. Frey footmen marched home with compliments on the Lannister-Frey accord. The ironborn longships, scattered and chastened, had returned to raids on distant shores rather than the Blackwater Bay. Jaime and Cersei reunited in King's Landing beneath the high vaults of the Great Sept, surrounded by banners of every house united in peace. Tywin stood at the dais, pride and relief etched in his austere features. The High Council assembled at Maester Luwin's summons to formalize the regency and swear oaths for the princess's guardianship. Amid the finery and solemnity, Jaime felt a quiet joy. A kingdom healed not by fire and blood, but by the steady forge of mercy enforced by steel. Outside, snow fell on the Red Keep's towers, and the city's lanterns glowed like embers in the dusk. The realm had weathered madness and was at last at rest. In the hush of that moment, Jaime Lannister knew that the legend written of him, no longer Kingslayer, but protector of the realm, would endure not for a single deed, but for a lifetime of choices made at the balance of mercy and power. And as he stood hand in hand with his sister, beneath the silent gaze of stone gods, he wondered if any man could ask for a greater redemption than that. Oh. Ha. Do. The first snows of the new year drifted gently over King's Landing, laying a soft white blanket atop the Red Keep's battlements and the whispering rooftops below. In the Great Hall, Jaime Lannister stood before the assembled Regency Council. Tywin Lannister as Warden of the West, Margaery Tyrell as Mediator, Lord Gawain Westerling, representing the Crown Lands, Lady Lynesse Corbray speaking for the Vale, and the Baratheon Herald on behalf of the Stormlands. Each clad in velvet and steel, their banners arrayed in ordered splendor. At the high table beside them, seated on a dais of carved oaken blocks, sat the princess, Rhaella Targaryen, newly 8 years old, her violet eyes bright and curious, hair brushed in a single braid of spun silver. Jaime folded his hands upon the pommel of his sword. "My lords and ladies," he began, voice steady though the hush of expectation rang in his ears. "We have come nearly a year since the Mad King was confined, since the mercy you extended to House Frey and Fowler, since the Ironborn yielded trade rather than raid. The realm stands at a crossroads, and it is our duty to guide it toward lasting peace." He gestured to the princess. "Your grace will soon be of an age to learn the duties of rule. This council exists only to see her safely to her majority. I propose that we convene a teaching council. Maesters, septas, experienced stewards, to instruct her not only in the histories of the Seven Kingdoms, but in the virtues of justice, mercy, and the burdens of power." "Now." Murmurs of assent rose around the table. Lady Lynesse inclined her head. "A wise plan. The Vale's septa are at your disposal." Margaery Tyrell added, "Our own maesters will compile the record of this council's decisions for her lessons." The Baratheon herald smiled. "Let the princess learn that a ruler's first duty is to guard her people, not to demand their fealty." Tywin studied Jaime for a long moment before nodding. "So be it. Let the records be prepared. And may the girl's teaching forge a monarch wiser than her forebears." As the council dispersed to debate the curricula, Jaime glanced to where Cersei sat at the princess' side, gently guiding her to rise. The silver braid fell over Rhaella's shoulder, a living echo of the dragon's lineage, seemingly fragile, yet destined for strength. Cersei rose and gave Jaime a brief, triumphant look before turning back to the child, smoothing the princess's skirts. Jaime felt that familiar warmth. In Cersei's presence he found both refuge and resolve. In the weeks that followed, the teaching council convened daily in the solar above the Hand's Tower. Rhea learned to read the old tongue in the common speech, to decipher runes of law, to ride a small palfrey across the courtyard. Jaime and Cersei took turns overseeing her lessons, often arriving unannounced to gauge her progress. Under their watch, the princess' curiosity blossomed. She pressed questions about past rebellions, about the fate of the North, about the dragons that once soared above the world. One afternoon, Jaime escorted the princess to the alchemist's vault in the Red Keep, now purged of its deadly sap. Before them lay barrels of wildfire residue, crystallized and inert, stored behind iron bars. Rhaella's violet eyes widened at the greenish glow. "Father's alchemists once swore to make dragons flame," Jaime said softly, kneeling. "But Mad Kings turned it to mass murder. Mercy demands we destroy it all, lest ambition tempt another." "Now." The princess touched the glass, frowning. "You will break it." Jaime lifted a hammer. "Yes. All of it." He struck the crystal's edge. It shattered with a gleam like captured lightning. Rhaella covered her mouth in wonder. Meanwhile, in the shadowed streets beyond the Red Keep, whispers stirred. A courier from the Iron Islands reached Duskendale bearing a furtive note. "We remember your mercy, but mercy must be repaid in blood. The Greyjoys will sail again." Lord Gawain Westerling brought the dispatch to Jaime, who convened an emergency session of the council. "We must bolster our naval patrols," he warned, "and send envoys to the Isles offering them trade and recognition, should they agree to cease their raiding forever." Tywin growled at the news. "The Ironborn answer only to pillage." Cersei leaned forward. "Then let them test our mercy. But let us offer them hope first, lest we provoke the very raids we fear. Then assigned arrow. Summoned by Raven, the Greyjoy Lord, Urigan Saltright of Orkmont, arrived in King's Landing under a banner of truce. He was a tall, gaunt man with salt-white hair and a single patch over one eye. In the solar, Jaime offered him a seat and a cup of spiced wine. "My lord," Jaime began, "we honor your seafaring prowess. We offer you fishing rights along our shores, status as royal pilots in Blackwater Bay, and safe harbor at Lannisport, if you swear to desist from raiding our coasts." Urigan's one eye gleamed. "The sea's the Ironborn's life, Lion. We raid where we must." He leaned back. "But if you would call us pilots, then pilots we can be, so long as you guard our freedom at Salt and Stone." Jaime nodded. "Let a charter be drawn. If you break it, our fleet will drive you from these waters for a generation." Urigan studied him, then grinned, revealing a silver tooth. "A hard bargain. Very well, Lion. You have yourself Ironborn pilots. May the sea serve you as well as it does me." Then winter waned and spring's first green returned to the fields when the council faced its greatest test, a plot to assassinate Cersei. In the dead of night, a cloaked figure slipped through the shadows of the Hand's Tower, blade glinting beneath a lantern's glow. Within a heartbeat, Sir Barristan Selmy and Sir Boros Blount intercepted the intruder, steel at throat and sword at back. The would-be killer, a disgraced squire once loyal to the Mad King, struggled, eyes wild with fanaticism. He spat curses of Targaryen blood, swore to slay the half-blood queen who had bound Aerys in chains. Jaime, roused by the commotion, arrived to order the squire bound and taken before the council in the Great Hall at dawn. Cersei's face, pale but firm, greeted him in the torchlight. "No life is beyond justice," she said. "Let him answer for treason." At daybreak, the council assembled, placing the squire on trial before stone gods and steel-clad lords. He confessed fully. He had conspired with a handful of die-hard loyalists in the City Watch and the Gold Cloaks, feeding them coin to undermine the Regency. His confession, witnessed by Barristan's silent presence, sent a ripple of consternation through the assembly. Tywin's voice cut like a whetted blade. "Such treachery demands an example." Cersei rose, her voice steady and severe. "Mercy is not weakness, but mercy must be earned. A squire cannot judge a queen's worth. A squire must learn it. Send him to the wall, to serve beyond the Shadow Tower, under Ranger's chain. Let him defend the realm where none else will." Then to answer. A hush fell. The Baratheon herald nodded. The Tyrell lady whispered assent, and at last Tywin released a breath. "Let it be so." Mercy, earned on ice and blood. By midsummer, the princess's 9th name day approached. Cersei planned a grand tournament in the courtyard, riding the wave of public goodwill. Jousts, melees, archery contests, and feats of strength would fill 3 days' revelry. Jaime oversaw the preparations. Lances borrowed from each house, lists drawn in painted chalk, boars roasted whole over open pits, dancers from Lys and Bravos invited to perform. The tournament was intended not only as celebration, but as demonstration of unity. Knights from every corner of the realm would compete under the princess's patronage. On the day itself, the sun blazed bright, and the air hummed with voices. Rhaella, dressed in violet velvet trimmed with gold, presided from a dais behind Cersei and Jaime, casting crowns of laurel upon the triumphant. In the lists, Sir Bronn of the Blackwater unhorsed a Taroshi sellsword. King's Landing smiths held knife-throwing contests, and the Dornish archers danced their way through a flaming arch. As dusk fell on the final day, fireworks, imported at great cost from the citadel, bloomed above the Red Keep, painting the sky in emerald and ruby. Below, the princess giggled at each burst of light, Cersei's proud smile never leaving her face. Jaime watched them both, heart full. The troubles of war receding behind memories of fire and madness. Yet even in that moment of splendor, Jaime's eyes drifted northward to the distant silhouette of the Aerys towers. He knew that vigilance must be eternal, that mercy and steel must remain in balance, and that the peace they had forged, fragile as a dragon's egg, depended above all on their unbroken resolve. As the last spark faded, Jaime Lannister took Cersei's hand in his. The realm's future lay stretched before them, an open road of fading snows, waking blossoms, and the promise of a princess who would learn the art of rulership under the twin lights of mercy and justice. And at his side, the sister who shared his blood and his oath. He turned toward that road, protector of the realm, no longer alone in legend, but at last truly leading Westeros into its dawning age of peace. The months that followed the princess name day passed in a flurry of quiet industry. The teaching council met each dawn to guide Rhaella through lessons of history and law. The maesters of the citadel compiled annals of each decree, and the small folk of King's Landing learned to expect the white and gold cloak of mercy by Jaime's side whenever disputes arose in the bazaars or taverns. Even the sundered districts beyond the walls began sending representatives to petition the Regency Council, seeking redress for old grievances, land restored to widows, arrears of tithes remitted, debts of seed grain forgiven. Yet beyond the city's gates, the realm's edges still simmered. In the Vale, Lady Lyness Corbray dispatched ravens to warn of a cabal among the mountain clans, resentful of peacekeepers patrolling the passes. In the Iron Islands, Uragan Saltright's pilots grumbled at customs levies, and a few stubborn longships slipped north along the coast. And to the south, in the Stormlands, a harvest blight left fields barren. Some whispered it was a curse sent by Aerys' last loyalists to punish the realm for its mercy. Jaime surveyed these troubles from the solar window in the Red Keep, the first light of spring filtering through stained glass. Cersei stood beside him, clutching a petition from the citizens of the River Road, requesting relief from highwaymen emboldened by the Vale's dissidents. "We cannot be everywhere," Jaime said. "Yet, if we spread too thin, mercy becomes a hollow promise." Cersei laid a hand on his arm. "Then let us show we intend to keep our vow. Send Bronn with 40 cavalry to the Vale passes. Send Lady Anya to the Stormlands with food and coin for the harvest, and I will ride north to the islands, accompanied by the Vale envoy, to reinforce our charter." He nodded, action rising within him. "And I will host Lord Hoster Frey and a delegation from the Riverlands here, to negotiate a new road patrol law. Riverwatch, administered jointly by Frey and Tully under council oversight." That afternoon, Bronn departed with a dozen Kingsguard and 30 mounted peacekeepers, riding north through misty hills to show the mountain clans that the Regency meant business. Lady Anya gathered her Dornish riders and streamed southward, laden with grain and gold. Cersei summoned Uragan Saltright's son, young Kyron Saltright, eager for respect, and prepared a small fleet to sail west at high tide. Jaime turned then to his next task, unifying the fractured Riverwatch. Within the Hand's Tower, he met Hoster Frey at an elaborately drawn map of the Trident and its tributaries. Beside them, Ser Malar Craigahall and a stern-faced Tully envoy, Sir Osmond, argued over who would control which ford. "We share control, under council decree," Jaime insisted, stepping between the two lords. "Every crossing will have joint patrol, half Frey, half Tully, led by one of my peacekeepers. No man may collect toll or levy without both banners raised." "Now." Hoster and Osmond glared, but each recognized the necessity. At last, Frey grunted. "So be it. But the Black Fork is ours to monitor." Osmond bowed. "And the Green Fork to us. We shall report monthly to the council." Jaime pressed the treaty into their hands. "Sign here, here, and here." Then the Riverwatch is born. They signed, seals pressed into red wax, and Jaime felt the quiet thrill of another knot tied against chaos. By dusk, word arrived that Bronn's patrol had routed a band of Vale brigands near the Bloody Gate, capturing their leaders and dispersing the rest. Lady Anya rode in 2 days later, her riders laden with sacks of grain and purses of gold, welcomed by storm-lashed villagers who wept at the sight of relief. Cersei, having fetched Tyron Saltright on the winds, returned with news that the Isles would abide the charter so long as they could fish and sail free of pirates. On a bright morning, Jaime and Cersei stood together on the Red Keep's battlements, surveying the banners of Riverwatch fluttering along the Trident's banks, the Dornish red and gold at the Stormhook fields, and the slender sails drifting home from the Isles. Rhaella rode her palfrey on the inner courts, taught by her septa to greet every banner with respect and thanks. Jaime drew Cersei close. "We have built much," he said, voice warm against the wind. "Yet the realm will always need our vigilance, and our mercy." She smiled, eyes shining. "Then let us be ever watchful. And let the princess learn that to rule is never to rest." Together, they turned back toward the city, hands clasped. Hearts resolved to carry mercy like a blade, sharp enough to protect, gentle enough to heal, and to walk the long road of peace until Westeros knew, at last, that mercy tempered by steel could forge a kingdom stronger than blood or fire alone.